Beauty from the Shelf is a podcast where industry experts fill in the gaps integral to growth for early-stage beauty founders and brands. For today's episode, I am so excited to have two guests joining me. I have Ashley McLeod from Momentus Capital and Byron Whitmore from Macy's S.P.U.R Pathways program. Once we get into the show, you'll hear a little bit more about how Macy's has partnered with Momentus Capital through their S.P.U.R Pathways program to offer funding for brands that are founded by people of color. If you know me personally, you know how passionate I am about equity in the CPG space. And so I'm so excited to have Ashley and Byron on today to chat about the funding options through this partnership. Here's a little bit from our conversation.
We want to help you to use that capital to grow the full totality of your business, not just the business within Macy's or within Bloomingdale's or within Blue Mercury. It's, growing your business throughout the full retail marketplace that you're currently selling your product or that you want to sell your product.
All right, let's talk about our guests. First up is Byron. Byron works at Macy's Inc., and he leads operations and strategy for the S.P.U.R Pathways program. His background is within corporate finance and strategy across a multitude of industries, including investment banking, retail, and CPG. Ashley McLeod is an economic development professional who currently works for Momentus Capital. Her background is working with a variety of private and publicly held organizations that offer funding programs through real estate and funding. She's based in Detroit, Michigan. And now I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Emerson Group. Before we get into the episode, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Emerson Group. Thank you to the Emerson Group for continuing to sponsor the Beauty from the Shelf podcast. Your support allows us to continue to give early-stage founders the tips and tools to grow their businesses. And now that we've thanked our sponsors and heard a little bit about Ashley and Byron, let's get into today's episode. I'm so excited to have you both on the podcast today and to talk about funding, because this is something that is a major challenge for a lot of early stage brands, and especially early stage brands that are founded by people of color. And I've really connected with the work that your organizations are doing together and the mission, and know that you offer funding to entrepreneurs. And I'd love to just start off our conversation by talking a little bit about each of your organizations. So would love for Byron to start by you telling us a little bit about the Macy's S.P.U.R Pathways partnership.
Yeah, thank you so much. At Macy's, we've had a long journey on helping suppliers to find success and to find scale. Along that journey, as this is, it's really evolved. We have found that barrier to capital and barrier to access to permanent capital has been something that, our founders, our underrepresented suppliers really need. So S.P.U.R Pathways is a multi-year, multifaceted funding program to advance entrepreneurial growth, close wealth gaps, and shatter systemic barriers faced by diverse-owned and underrepresented businesses. Through Macy's Inc., our $30 million investment, and our ongoing partnership with Momentus Capital, our capital program, S.P.U.R Pathways, will ultimately represent up to around $200 million in critical funding for underrepresented businesses, serving as a catalyst for growth and development. We want to couple that capital or that access to capital with also technical assistance. So in addition to providing access to capital, the businesses will have access to a full suite of necessary tools and opportunities to help them progress through various growth stages. This includes an advisory network of successful entrepreneurs around the country for strategic growth advice and help with credit improvement, business plans, financial reporting, daily operating challenges, business strategy, opportunity evaluation, and other personalized services.
That sounds awesome. And I love that it's holistic and not just offering the funding aspect, but also offering additional resources for those founders. Ashley, can you tell us a little bit about Momentus Capital?
Yeah, Monique, happy to share. So Momentus Capital is a branded family of companies that includes nonprofit, mission-driven lenders. Our mission is to provide communities with access to capital and opportunities that they deserve. We work with small business owners, commercial real estate developers, affordable housing real estate developers, developing multifamily, and other types of entrepreneurs who might otherwise not have access to the type of financing that we provide. And just as more context, in the last 5 years alone, we've deployed almost $1 billion in capital to business and organizations led by people of color. So, given our mission and, the things that Byron shared about Macy's Inc., we were really excited to be chosen as the bank of choice for the Macy's S.P.U.R Pathways program, as this program aligns with our mission and our vision and supports the deployment of capital to entrepreneurs of color.
Thank you so much. So funding processes we know can be tedious. And brands are preparing pitch decks that might be viewed for a minute if you're talking about traditional investors. I'm curious and would love for you all to talk a little bit about the selection process for brands that are part of the S.P.U.R Pathways program. Are there specific things that you are looking for? Are there specific brand types? Would love for you to just share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, happy to. So S.P.U.R Pathways, it's specifically designed to support diverse owned and underrepresented growth stage businesses. While we encourage businesses who are certified, certification is not a mandatory prerequisite to be considered for funding. For our application and details and eligibility requirements, please visit macysinc.com/purpose. When we think about, our focus area in terms of how we can best provide that program support, we really want to focus on retail and retail-related products and services. When you think about what the eligible use cases for funding, so think about that use of proceeds, those are working capital, CapEx, growth, and refinancing. The capital solutions range from small business term loans to term loans for working capital and commercial real estate to non-dilutive growth equity. You can see from that range of capital solutions that we're really trying to work with the breadth of underrepresented founders and to meet them where they are, being if they're, very early stage to someone that's very mature and maybe really ready for that non-dilutive growth equity. If you think about that financing process and what that kind of entails, the entirety of that financing process from underwriting to funding approval is governed by Momentus Capital. While Macy's Inc. provides technical assistance required to support participants leveraging the capital to drive sustainable growth post-funding. If there's any question in addition to that process in terms of really trying to craft that growth narrative, we're there to help with some assistance, but we really remove ourselves from that funding process.
Thank you. Thank you. And so what are some tips that you have for brands that are looking to apply to be a part of the program? Do you need a background in finance to complete the application? Are you looking for a lot of financial numbers? I know it can be very intimidating if you are a founder to run a business, to create products, and then to also have to put together a financial valuation. Help us out and let us know what that looks like.
Yeah, you're right. The financial process is very arduous. And if you want to, like a large corporate, even they actually hire those services out to someone else to help them do it because it can be kind of intimidating. You don't need a background in finance to complete the application. However, when speaking to investors, you should know your numbers inside and out. The best applicants are able to paint a picture about the opportunity, but then also communicate their growth story through their financials.
Yeah, and also I'd just like to add, the spirit of the partnership is to make it essentially easy to apply, but like Byron said, you still need to know your brand in and out. So what this means specifically is we're looking for your most recent revenues. We're looking for, what you'd like to use your capital for, and if you have an amount that you would like to get financed. So if you have some direction around the strategy of your own brand, that really does help us with, pointing you to the right financial product and also making sure that you have a positive experience with us.
Yeah, and then just one last point. I think, for anyone that's looking to get capital, investors want a picture of an opportunity. They're not trying to just fund a cash need. So it's really about how that capital can help you capitalize on a white space of the market and how it can help your brand to meet unreached demand for your product, as opposed to just saying, I really need capital. This business needs capital to succeed and things like that. Kind of just reframe your narrative around the opportunity and not necessarily the capital need.
I like to say that people invest in a dream or a vision. So it's yes, we know that you at the end of the day are selling a product, but to your point, what additional opportunities are you providing as a brand that's entering the market? And how is that something that's different and going to change the market so that I can, as an investor, get my return? So I like that. For brands that apply and maybe aren't selected, maybe some of those brands are listening and they weren't selected. What advice or feedback do you have for them? Is this a situation where if you get denied one time, you should apply again? You can apply again? Is it like a one-time situation and, it's unlikely that you can get selected if you don't get selected the first time? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, like Byron said, Momentus makes the financing decisions for each applicant. So in short, if a brand is not selected for the S.P.U.R Pathways program, we do provide feedback. And then sometimes that feedback is combined with being connected with our business advisory services team. And that team provides free technical assistance to applicants to get them capital ready. So this could mean like support on financial statements or their strategy or their marketing plans, things that we feel like would get that brand capital ready. I would also say, to answer your other question around applying again, several brands have applied again, or once they're in contact with the loan officer, just reach back out once, that feedback that they've been given has been addressed.
Thank you. So there's hope. If you try the first time, you can try again. I love to hear it. So many folks are aware of VC funding or angel investors. And this is a widely discussed avenue for funding. There's Shark Tank, there's shows about it. So there's a lot of familiarity around that. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about some of the differences that might show up in borrowing from Momentus Capital versus other financial backing vehicles. You talked a little bit about some of the additional resources that you offer outside of just financial lending, but love for you to talk a little bit more about that.
Yep. There's a few things I'll note. So first, we don't just provide financial capital alone because we understand, that it's not always sufficient. We need to prepare financial capital with knowledge and social capital. And entrepreneurs of color specifically don't always come with the same friends and family and network or even have exposure for what all the financing options are. So we've learned, through our history that an investment is not as helpful if the business owner has not optimized their business to deploy capital. And so this is why we offer business advising services that I mentioned earlier in order to help businesses become capital ready. Also, secondly, when you had mentioned VC and angel investors, we offer senior debt and mezzanine debt at varying levels of financing, which is a bit different than, VC and angel investing. Just want to note for your audience.
Thanks. Are you able to expand on that difference anymore, Ashley? We're talking folks that might not come from financial backgrounds. I know you have an MBA. Byron, you came from corporate finance. So imagine folks have no idea. You just know you're getting, with angel investors, you're saying you're giving me money. I'm typically exchanging for equity or something similar. Can you talk a little bit more about what it might look like or what it could look like?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. So typically with senior or mezzanine debt, it's literally debt that needs to be repaid. Similar to what you said with VC financing or maybe angel investors, there's likely an exchange of cash for like a share, like an equity share. And not to get too deep in the weeds, we have a product that's it's not investment, but it's a revenue or profit share. And, if any of your listeners are interested, feel free to reach out to learn a little bit more about that. And that's affiliated with our mezzanine debt. But just know that even that product that we offer just would be essentially debt that would need to be repaid.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's something to really be considered when looking at who that funding source is. Trying to really think about, what can my company service? As Ashley talked about, when you're looking at products that are higher in the capital stack, like a debt product, it does require repayment. It also does require it to be serviced from like an interest payment. So that's something that is going to be hitting your business from right on your P&L with the interest payment. And then you have the cash flow impact through principal repayment. So those are really the kind of things to think about when you are accessing external capital. And those are some of the trade-offs that you also want to consider. So, if there is debt, you get to keep all the upside. If you do take equity and, it's a hot term, or it's a really hot item here, I got VC funded. It sounds great. It sounds like, you've made it. But you are exchanging that cash for equity. And that's going to be them taking upside that you could have kept if you did go to a debt product. So, there's many different trade-offs. And you're right. It can be, again, intimidating if you don't understand the terms. So I would also just encourage anyone to, no matter what financing they're looking to pursue, to get external help if you don't understand it. Because if you sign up for something, you really want to make sure you understand everything about it and understand the different nuances of it so you can be best positioned to succeed with that capital. Because I think sometimes if you do take capital and your business is not able to service it, that capital could end up killing your business. So it's really important to understand what you're borrowing or what the investor is asking, just so you can be best positioned to use it and to come out on the other side in the best position possible.
Thank you for that add-on. So since this is the S.P.U.R Pathways program is something that is tied to Macy's, for the brands that receive funding through the S.P.U.R Pathways program, does that mean that they are going to get placement at Macy's in their stores? Or can you talk a little bit more about how Macy's might partner with brands that are selected for the program?
So receiving funding and being accepted in the S.P.U.R does not guarantee placement. The decision for funding and the decision for being placed in store, being placed on our website through the marketplace or through purchase order, those are two totally different decisions. And so the placement of product in store within Macy's, Bloomingdale's, or Bluemercury, that is all based on the merchant in that organization, those buyers. So those are two totally very different decisions. When we think about our business diversity strategy, it's founded on three pillars of access to education, access to customers, and access to capital. So access to capital is something like S.P.U.R Pathways. Access to customer is how do we get your brand in front of, the millions of people that access our website every day or the millions of people that come through our 700 plus doors every day as well. So in the program, what I can do on my side in terms of being as part of S.P.U.R Pathways is help you to craft that narrative and to make introductions to those brand teams, but it would never be guaranteed as part of being a participant in the program.
Thank you for clarifying that, Byron. I know that for some brands, applying to some of these programs is a question about, does that mean that I'm guaranteed placement? So thank you for clarifying that. It sounds like there are still connections that are made, and that is still helpful. And that there's also assistance in ensuring that brands are ready to at least prepare those conversations. But again, it still is up to those buying teams to make those final decisions. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think the other part of this is that, you're not required to be a supplier of Macy's to get into this program. So when we look at what the benefit of this program to someone can be, is that, and we don't require like exclusivity either. So, if we can get you the access to capital, if you can get through the process to be funded and then you can get into the program, we want to help you to use that capital to grow the full totality of your business, not just the business within Macy's or within Bloomingdale's or within Bluemercury. It's, growing your business throughout the full retail marketplace that you're currently selling your product or that you want to sell your product.
Really happy that we're able to share this avenue for funding with my audience. I would love for you all just to share again where folks can find you, whether that's social media handles, more so talking about Momentus Capitals and S.P.U.R Pathways, of course, than your personal handles, but where they can find more information about these programs. We'll go ahead and start with Ashley.
Yeah, no problem. And Byron, feel free to chime in. So feel free to learn more about the S.P.U.R Pathways program by Googling Macy's S.P.U.R Pathways and going to the first link available. You can also go to Momentus, Momentus, CAP.org to learn more about financing options for your small business. Thank you so much, Monique, for having us on. Byron, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, thank you again for your time today. We really believe that capital can be that catalyst for growth. And S.P.U.R Pathways and Momentus Capital, it's just another opportunity or alternative for the funding options that are out there that in the past may not have been as accessible. So we just want to encourage you to, apply for the program, ask as many questions as you have. We'll be happy to answer them for you. But, if you get funding here or if you get funding somewhere else, best of luck with it. But we think this could be a great opportunity for you.
Thank you both. Well, as always, I will include all of the information that we discussed in the show notes. I encourage everyone who's listening, if you are looking for funding, to check out Momentus Capital and check out the Macy S.P.U.R Pathways program. And as always, thank you for listening. Thank you, Ashley and Byron, for your time today. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks so much.
Yep. Thank you so much, Monique. And thank you, Byron and Ryan and David. Appreciate it.
As always, I'd like to thank Byron and Ashley for coming onto the show and sharing about the funding options available through Macy's S.P.U.R Pathways programs and Momentus Capital. All of the information that was mentioned on the podcast will be included in the show notes. If you found this helpful, I encourage you to share this with a friend or colleague. And please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps to ensure that the podcast continues to grow so that more founders can get visibility to things they can do to grow their business. As always, thank you for listening. This is the last podcast recording in the year 2023. I'd like to wish you all a very happy and safe holiday season. I hope that this year brought you many great things and look forward to what is to come in 2024. Thanks again, everyone. Bye.